What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be taking a deep look at input lag as well as dead zones for the Black Ops 1 and 2 ports, because these are among some of the bigger complaints I've seen in the community, especially when it comes to the Black Ops 1 port. And I have seen quite a few recommendations from people letting you know how you can fix these or at least improve in these areas by adjusting various settings or by having a DualSense Edge controller, for instance. And I wanted to take a deep look at these recommendations to see if they actually improve things for you. And the first area I wanted to focus on here is input lag. And something I've been seeing a lot of people mention is the PS4 version of these games. Even if you're playing on a PS5, the PS4 version of the game has lower input lag than the PS5 version of the game. So the recommendation I've been seeing is if you play on PS5, don't install the PS5 version. Instead, go and select the PS4 version and install that. So let's dive into the testing, starting it off with Black Ops 1. And while the game is only running at 60 FPS, I recorded this at 120 FPS, and then I have slowed things down here. And as you can see, there is a very slight discrepancy here, and I was replicating this multiple times as well. So this didn't just happen in one test or anything. This was happening in every one of my tests. The PS4 version at 60 FPS was half a frame faster when it came to that input delay. So it looks like in this case, it at least won't hurt you to play the PS4 version compared to the PS5 version. I'm not noticing any performance improvements by playing the PS5 version. In fact, the games look identical as far as I can tell on both versions of the game. If I didn't label these, I wouldn't be able to tell you which one was PS4 or PS5 here. And so even though this is a very, very slight improvement, it looks like it's not going to hurt to play the PS4 version. Although I've got to say, roughly 100 milliseconds of input delay is still a lot. That is quite a high value, especially when you compare it to modern Call of Duty games, and we will look at a Black Ops 7 comparison in just a little bit. But before we get into that, I did also want to take a look at the Black Ops 2 ports. And once again, I tested both versions of these, and it turns out both of them are noticeably faster than the input lag we were experiencing in Black Ops 1. And that is noticeable while playing as well, if you've got a keen eye for these sorts of things. But it turns out in this case with Black Ops 2, based on my tests, I was unable to find any difference whatsoever when it comes to input lag. And as a result, it doesn't seem to matter which version you're playing on when it comes to Black Ops 2. Now, I know some people are swearing by the fact that the PS4 version feels better, and if it feels better to you, by all means, play the PS4 version. Once again, I can't tell the difference visually between the two anyway. And so even if it really is just a placebo, if it feels better to you to play the PS4 version, then play the PS4 version. It looks like it's not going to hurt you at all, at least. And then finally, as promised, let's have a look at the comparisons with Black Ops 7. And it turns out with Black Ops 7 doing these same tests, I was consistently getting a 33 millisecond value for input lag, which is so much better and more responsive than both of these ports. So there really is a very noticeable difference between modern COD and older CODs when it comes to that, or at least the ports. Now, I'm sure some people are wondering what was the input lag like back in the day on the old console. Unfortunately, my old consoles are packed away. I don't even know where the games are at this point, so I unfortunately don't have those comparisons for you guys. I suspect the input lag wasn't quite as high, although when it comes to the dead zones, I'm pretty confident they were the same back in the day as they are now. So let's dive into the second section of this video, and that is taking a look at these dead zones, as well as the recommendations I've been seeing floating around online that are designed to apparently help improve these dead zones. So in order to test this one properly, I actually designed and 3D printed this little jig to help test these dead zones, and it is compatible with my custom thumbstick system, which I'll be talking about a lot more in the coming weeks or months as I get that all sorted out. But in the Black Ops 1 port, using a standard PS5 controller, there's quite a high dead zone value, and based on my measurements here, it's roughly 7 degrees in each direction that you have to rotate your analog stick in order for any input to register whatsoever. And that means you can wiggle your analog stick back and forth without your character or your aim moving at all. And of course, there are no in-game dead zone settings either. This is just the default for everyone. Whereas in Black Ops 2, I did the testing on that as well, and you can see the dead zones are noticeably tighter, like they're still more loose than I would like them to be. But with this, it appears to take roughly 3.5 to 4 degrees of deflection in either direction before it starts registering movement in-game. And that is obviously far more tolerable than what we're seeing in the Black Ops 1 ports. And keep in mind, I did test this on the PS4 and PS5 versions as well, and the version of the game doesn't matter at all. This is how the game is actually coded. And I was going to do a test in modern CODs, but there's no point because you have dead zone control in modern CODs, and you can actually get it to the point where when you go too low, you get stick drift, which means even with a controller that's in great shape, if you lower that dead zone too much, your character will move without you even deflecting that stick at all. So let's move on to the recommendations I've been seeing online. And the first recommendation I've seen from some people is to plug your controller into a PC and then use typically a browser-based calibration tool where you can adjust the dead zones on your controllers. And this is something I've of course done with my personal controller, which is an aim controller using TMR sticks, so I've got no stick drift on this thing. And my dead zones on this are set essentially to 0. By the way, if you like this controller or you like the idea of TMR sticks, I am affiliated with AIM controllers, so using the code ACE at checkout will save you some money on that. But using my controller with 0 dead zones, I performed the tests again, and as much as I'd love to say that buying my controller is the solution to everything here, it isn't. This doesn't change your in-game dead zones at all. In the Black Ops 1 port, it requires the same amount of deflection as with the default PlayStation controller. In saying that, these TMR sticks do make a big difference in modern games where you have that in-game dead zone control. But when it comes to these ports themselves, changing the dead zone on your controller isn't going to change anything at all here. However, another recommendation I've been seeing blow up all over in the community, so many people are suggesting this, is if you have a DualSense Edge controller, you can actually adjust some of these settings within the PlayStation menus themselves. So if you go to your accessory settings and then DualSense Edge settings, you can create a new profile or edit the one that you're currently using. Go to your stick and sensitivity dead zone profile. The recommendation is usually to go with the quick, digital, or dynamic curves. Then set your curve adjustment to -5 and dead zone to 0%, of course. Make sure that applies on your left and right stick. Does this solve it? Well, after setting that all up on my DualSense Edge and performing the same test, once again, it's the exact same deflection required in order for an input to register. And none of this is a surprise to me whatsoever because this is an in-game dead zone, so changing anything with your controller will have no impact on the dead zones themselves. But in saying that, once the input is registered by the game, then those adjustments you made to your response curve on the controller itself, they will apply at that point because the input is being registered by the game. And since with those specific curves that people are recommending, they have a very steep initial acceleration, this does tend to make things feel a little snappier once you actually engage the input by moving outside of the dead zone in the game. So these adjustments are not necessarily a bad recommendation. It might feel better for you because at least once you do get outside of the dead zone, things will feel a bit more snappy and responsive rather than having that standard exponential curve that Call of Duty uses by default and that they used to use in all of the older Call of Duty games. So if you have a DualSense Edge, you may want to try this out, but I just want to make sure it's crystal clear here. Contrary to many of the claims that you see in the community, this doesn't have an impact on the dead zone area itself when playing on these ports. It just impacts how your aim is going to feel once you get outside of those dead zones. So there we go. That is going to wrap it up when it comes to the testing I've done here with input lag as well as dead zones with these ports. And overall, while it is something you can adapt to and everybody's on the same playing field here at least, like everybody's dealing with input lag, everybody's dealing with these dead zones, at the end of the day, it is a bit of a shame that we are dealing with these, especially with the dead zones in the Black Ops 1 port. And the reason behind that is changing the default dead zone value should be a very easy adjustment on their end, and it would have a positive impact for everyone in the community. I know some people push back and say that's how they were back in the day, so that's how they should be today, but this isn't something that fundamentally changes the game or the gameplay design or anything. Making that adjustment would simply make the game feel more responsive for every single player out there. I generally don't see those same people making the argument that they need to reduce the resolution back to the old console resolution that we had back in the day as well, because that's how it was back in the day, despite the fact that everybody's benefiting from the fact that there's a higher resolution now. I really think it's the same with dead zones. It's more of a quality of life thing that just makes the game feel better without adjusting any of the gameplay design that we experienced back in the day. At the end of the day though, I'm not going to be holding my breath for any changes here. We don't know if they are planning on supporting these ports with any additional patches going forward, outside of the fact that they did take some game modes offline to prevent a massive exploit with players being able to massively rank up or even derank players to the point where people couldn't even play the game at all through no fault of their own. So it's nice to see that they got on top of that at least. Outside of that though, I wouldn't really hold my breath for any quality of life patches or anything like that that would improve dead zones, for instance. So I think we are probably stuck with these. At least we're armed with the correct information here and you're not going to be falling into any placebo effects. But of course, I am curious to hear from you guys in those comments down below. How are you feeling about the current state of input lag and dead zones with these Black Ops ports? Is it something you're generally fine adapting to, or maybe not? Is it something that is preventing you from maybe wanting to play these games as much or at all? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.